it was really a slant play, and every time we get in the eye, they'll think we were going to run a sweep, so they thought pursuing outside, and it was a slant, and I had a cutback, and I broke one tackle, went back in the secondary.
June 29th, 1983. It was 93 degrees in Monroe, Louisiana. Joe Delaney was the fastest man in the NFL, a Pro Bowler, who had just single-handedly saved the Kansas City Chiefs franchise from a decade of mediocrity. But as Joe stood on the edge of a sinkhole pond at Chenault Park that afternoon, his world-class speed meant nothing. His 4.3 40-yard dash was useless, because as he watched three young boys struggle in the deep, murky water, Joe Delaney was facing his only weakness. Joe Delaney couldn't swim. He knew it. His family knew it. But as the screams of those children hit the humid air, Joe didn't look for a lifeguard. He didn't look for a rope. He looked at a bystander and whispered 6 words that should be etched into the front gates of the Hall of Fame. "I can't swim, but I've got to save them."
Kids started yelling for help, and Joe instinctively got up from his seat on the ground and raced into the pond.
Today, we uncover the story of a man who gave up a multi-million-dollar destiny for 3 strangers. This isn't just a football story. This is the story of the greatest man to ever wear a uniform. To understand why Joe's sacrifice was so staggering, you have to remember how high he had climbed. For our fans who were there, you remember the AFC West in the late 70s and early 80s. It was a bloodbath. You had the Orange Crush defense in Denver. You had the Air Coryell Chargers. You had the Oakland Raiders in their peak bad boy era. And then there were the Kansas City Chiefs. By 1980, the Chiefs were a ghost of their Super Bowl IV glory. They were struggling. They were desperate for a superstar. In the 1981 draft, while everyone was looking at Lawrence Taylor or Ronnie Lott, the Chiefs went to a small school, Northwestern State, and found a track star named Joe Delaney. The scouts were skeptical. "He's only 5'10", 180 pounds, they said. He's a wide receiver playing running back." But then, the 1981 season kicked off. Joe didn't start the first game, but in Week 2 against the New England Patriots, Coach Marv Levy turned him loose. Joe exploded for 101 yards. The fans at Arrowhead hadn't seen a man move like that since Gale Sayers. It wasn't just speed, it was gliding. 2 weeks later, against the Seattle Seahawks, he did it again, 106 yards. Then came the Raiders in Week 5. You remember those Raiders. Ted Hendricks, Matt Millen, Lester Hayes. They tried to bully him. Joe responded by carving them up for 104 yards. But for every veteran fan watching this, there is one date you will never forget. October 18th, 1981. The Denver Broncos defense was legendary. They didn't allow 100-yard rushers. Joe Delaney went into Mile High Stadium and put up 193 yards. It remains one of the most dominant single-game performances by a rookie in the history of the league. There is a play in the third quarter, find the tape if you can, where Joe hits a hole that isn't even there. He makes 3 Broncos defenders miss in a space the size of a phone booth. By the time the clock hit 0, the Orange Crush was broken. Joe finished that year with 1,121 yards. He averaged nearly 5 yards a carry. He was the AFC Rookie of the Year. He went to the Pro Bowl. In one single season, Joe Delaney had become the most dangerous player in the AFC. He didn't just give the Chiefs a winning season, 9-7, he gave them hope. What made Joe Delaney resonate so deeply with the fans in Kansas City wasn't just the 40-yard dashes, it was the man himself. In the late 70s and early 80s, the NFL was starting to change. We were seeing the beginning of the celebrity athlete. But Joe Delaney was the ultimate throwback. He was a man of deep faith and quiet discipline. Here is what made Joe different from the modern stars we see today. Joe wasn't a me guy. In an era where players were starting to hold out for more money, Joe was a throwback. His teammates, like the great safety Gary Barbaro or the defensive end Art Still, will tell you that Joe was the quietest superstar in the locker room. He didn't have a posse. He didn't do commercials. He lived in a modest home. When the 1982 NFL strike happened, a 57-day work stoppage that tore the league apart, most players went to Florida or Las Vegas. Joe Delaney went back to Houghton, Louisiana. During that strike, Joe was found in his community every day. There is a legendary story of Joe visiting a local school. He noticed a group of kids who weren't playing because their shoes were falling apart. The next day, Joe showed up with dozens of pairs of new cleats and sneakers. He didn't call the press. He didn't ask for a tax receipt. He just didn't want those kids to feel less than. In 1982, his season was hampered by a detached retina. He only played 8 games. The experts started to whisper, was 1981 a fluke? Can his small frame handle the hits? Joe didn't respond with words. He spent the entire 1983 off-season training like a man possessed. He told his wife Geneva that 1983 was going to be the year the Chiefs went to the Super Bowl. He was faster, stronger, and more determined than ever. Which brings us back to that Wednesday in June. Cheneau Park was supposed to be a place of joy. Joe was there to relax before heading back to Kansas City for training camp. Near the center of the park was a man-made pond. To a child, it looked like a great place to wade, but the pond was a death trap. It had been excavated for dirt, leaving sudden 20-foot drop-offs just a few feet from the shore. 3 boys, Leandra Barker, Lanny Barker, and Harry Harris, were playing in the shallows. Suddenly they stepped off the ledge. They vanished under the water.
Joe jumped in the water to save them, but Joe couldn't swim.
Joe Delaney was sitting nearby. Now, I want you to really think about this. Joe was a professional athlete. His body was his livelihood. He had $1 million contract. He had a beautiful wife and 3 little girls at home. And most importantly, Joe Delaney had a lifelong fear of deep water because he had never learned to swim. When those boys started screaming, Joe didn't pause to weigh the cost. He didn't think about his stats. He didn't think about his contract. He didn't even think about his own life. He ran. A crowd had gathered. Adults were standing there, frozen in fear. Joe pushed past them. He dove into that water with the same explosive force he used to hit a gap against the Raiders. He reached the boys. In the chaos of the murky water, he fought to pull them up. He was struggling. He was drowning. But he managed to get to Harry Harris. He pushed him toward the shore. Harry was the only one who survived. Joe went back under for the other 2. He never came back up. When the police divers finally pulled Joe's body from the water, they found him near the 2 boys he was trying to save. Even in death, he was reaching for them. The news hit the wires that evening. In Kansas City, the local news interrupted regular programming. Fans who had cheered for his touchdowns just months earlier were now weeping in their living rooms. The fastest man in the NFL had been taken by the one thing he couldn't outrun: his own heart. The funeral was held at the Civic Center in Monroe. Over 3,000 people attended, teammates, rivals, and fans who had never met him but felt like they knew him. The 1983 season was a somber one for the NFL. The Chiefs wore a gold circle with the number 37 on their jerseys. President Ronald Reagan sent a message to the family and later posthumously awarded Joe the Presidential Citizens Medal. The citation read, "He made the ultimate sacrifice in placing his life on the line for those of 3 children. His discarded jersey on the bank of the pond stands as a sentinel to his courage." The Kansas City Chiefs were devastated. They didn't just lose a running back, they lost their heart. The team decided that while they wouldn't officially retire the number 37, they would never issue it to another player again. To this day, if you look at the Chiefs roster, you will see numbers 1 through 99, but you will never see a number 37 sprinting across the grass at Arrowhead Stadium. But here is where the story gets even more poignant for those of us who value history. In the years following his death, the what-if factor began to grow. We look at the 1980s. We see the rise of Marcus Allen. We see the dominance of Eric Dickerson and the late 80s surge of Christian Okoye in Kansas City. Statisticians have run the numbers. Based on his rookie trajectory and his physical metrics, Joe Delaney was on pace for a Hall of Fame career. He likely would have retired with over 10,000 yards. He likely would have been the face of the AFC for a decade. But Joe Delaney didn't care about the Hall of Fame. There is a foundation today, the Joe Delaney 37 Foundation, which focuses on teaching children in inner cities how to swim. It is a living legacy to ensure that what happened to Joe and those boys never happens again. Joe Delaney represented the very best of that era. He wasn't looking for a viral moment. He wasn't looking for a contract incentive. He was a man who saw a need and answered it, knowing full well the cost might be everything. Every year there is a debate about who belongs in Canton. We argue about efficiency ratings and Super Bowl rings. But I want to propose something to you today. If the Pro Football Hall of Fame is meant to honor those who brought the greatest credit to the game of football, how is Joe Delaney not in it? There are those who say his career was too short, just 23 games, and strictly by the numbers, they are right. But football is more than numbers. Football is a teacher of character. It's a game that is supposed to build men who are brave, selfless, and disciplined. Joe Delaney took the lessons of the gridiron and applied them to the ultimate test of the human spirit. He is the only player in NFL history whose greatest highlight didn't happen on a Sunday. When we look back at the 1981 season, we shouldn't just see a rookie who ran for 1,100 yards. We should see a man who was preparing himself for a moment of truth. Joe Delaney had the power, the grace, and the sweetness, but he had something else. A level of moral courage that we rarely see in any walk of life, let alone professional sports. He remains the uncovered legend of the NFL, a man whose name should be spoken in the same breath as the icons of the game, not because of the touchdowns he scored, but because of the lives he tried to save. The next time you watch a game at Arrowhead Stadium, or the next time you're looking through the record books of the early 80s, look for number 37. You won't find him in the current standings. You won't find him on the all-time leading rushers list. He didn't have enough time for that. But you will find him in the hearts of every Chiefs fan who lived through that era. You will find him in the lives of the children who learned to swim because of his foundation. And you will find him in the silent, empty locker that remains a tribute to a man who was too good for this world. Joe Delaney was a hero because he did what was right, not what was safe. He was a superstar who forgot he was a superstar the second he heard a child in trouble. In a world of stats, Joe Delaney is the one number that can't be calculated. He is the hero the NFL forgot. But on this channel, we will never let his name die. If you remember watching Joe Delaney play in 1981, or if you remember where you were when you heard the news in '83, please share your memories in the comments below. We need to keep this history alive for the next generation of fans. This has been NFL Uncovered. If you value the history and the heart of the game, please consider subscribing. We're going to keep digging into the stories that matter, the stories of the legends who made the NFL what it is today. If this story moved you, please leave a comment with the word hero. Let's fill the comment section with respect for Joe. Rest in peace, Joe. You were the greatest of us all.